We've finished our slightly longer than expected road to Maverick's ongoing series, finally placing us at the beginning. And that's a relief. But it left me wondering, how did I get there? In September of 1997, I would have been 12. I'd have been a regular at Comic Book City, although I still wouldn't quite catch on to the release dates of comic books for a while yet. I also wouldn't have known much about upcoming books, so short of ads in any comics that I bought, or those in Wizard magazine, I wouldn't have had any knowledge that Maverick was going to get his own ongoing series. There were ads. I remember a push in the wake of Onslaught where Marvel launched 8 or 9 books, including our main man Maverick. I also remember a shot of Maverick in the sewers with his fist glowing, and there was a phrase about the legacy virus. So while I know that these ads would have been seen by me, and I did know who Maverick was thanks to Wolverine issue 87, what drew me and my relatively limited budget into actually buying Maverick? There were probably 2 things. First off, the obvious answer. I wanted to know more about Maverick. Sure, he worked with Wolverine and Sabretooth, but I didn't know anything else about that time period. Larry Hama planted that seed in my mind tree 3 years ago, and only then was it finally bearing fruit. The second answer, though, is one that's familiar to any comic book collector. It was a new number 1. 1997 was only a few years after the speculator market collapsed, but as someone who grew up in it, I knew that comics could be worth money, especially a first issue. Sure, it might take 40 years for a book like Maverick to be worth any actual money, but who cares? I intend to live until at least 40 years old, so that's going to be easy money for me. If a new first issue came out, I did my best to grab it. And mycomicshop.com has Maverick issue 1 listed for a sweet $2, which is $1 under the cover price, baby. 17 more years to go and we hit that 40-year mark. Who knows what could happen by then? Anyways, my name is Ben, and this is Comic Book Breakdown, episode 10.4, Maverick, Truth and Consequences. One of the neat things to be found right off the bat in our first issue, capitalize the first letters here, is the Guide to the Marvel Universe. For a few months in 97 and 98, Marvel printed character guides inside of a fold-out page that was behind the cover. The 2-page guide would introduce the concept of the book, list and briefly explain the main cast, and then recap the recent events. If this issue was going to be the first comic that you ever bought, Marvel was going to arm you with all of the knowledge that you would need to read it, enjoy it, and hey, maybe come back next month. This is part of how I actually put together the past several episodes that you all just listened to. The recap here includes the events of X-Men Unlimited issue 15 and the Maverick one-shot. They do have the 2 books out of publication order, but I'd agree that the timeline for Maverick makes more sense that way. It's not how it happened, but it is better that way. Written by Jorge Gonzalez, with pencils by Jim Cheung, inks by Andrew Pepoy, and colors by Kevin Sommers, Maverick issue 1 was originally published in September of 1997, and opens at a concert. We're in Paris, France, at the Conservatoire Concert Hall, where cello player Francois Perregaux is crushing it. He has delivered the performance of a lifetime, possibly because he fears for his life. One of his business associates was recently arrested in Canada, and it's only a matter of time before someone connects them. The grateful applause of the audience does nothing to warm Francois's heart or calm him. He puts his instrument away, dons his coat, and exits the building. He only takes a few steps before someone speaks to him. They congratulate him on his excellent performance, and grab him by his collar, hauling Francois into the alley. A neon green sickle suddenly snaps to life, illuminating the men. Francois knows these 2 men, knows them and fears them. Boris Lubov is tall, broad-chested, all muscle. His black hair is worn back in a ponytail, and a mustache frames his mouth. Silver and red armor covers his legs and shoulders, exposing his chest and abs. A massive hammer, easily as large as his torso, rests in one hand. This weapon has earned him the nickname of Hammer. Next to him is Nikolai Vronsky. Where Hammer is wide, Nikolai, also called Sickle, is thin. His skin is gray-white, he's bald, and piercings adorn his left eyebrow and ears. A blue and gold vest rests over his chest, while red cloth hugs the rest of his body. In his hands is an energy sickle that he is all too willing to wield. Author Gonzalez tells us that these two men were Roma, who grew up traveling all over Central and Eastern Europe. When in their teens, they were enlisted by mafioso Ivan Pushkin, and he quickly grew to like them. They have been successful under his wing, they are terribly loyal, and they are his personal messengers. Woe to the one who receives their message. Hammer states that Henry Dubois, Francois' arrested associate, was set up. Not many people knew about the planned expansion, so the list of possible rats is pretty short. Francois is on that list. He protests this. Yes, the Canadians did approach him, but he didn't say anything. He and Dubois were friends, basically family. I mean, he gave Francois his Stradivarius. He would never turn on him. And of course, Francois knows better than to cross Ivan Pushkin. With a one-handed swing, Hammer embeds his weapon into the thick wall behind him. Then who did? There's only one person that Francois can think of. Major Barrington. It had to be him. Hammer smiles. There. That wasn't so bad, was it? Francois then begs for his life. He has a wife, 2 kids, all that kind of thing. Unfortunately, Pushkin thinks that Francois has become too great of a liability. From behind, Sickle's blade bursts through Francois' chest. All of this is new to us, and author Jorge Gonzalez opens with it intentionally. As an audience, we're likely to at least know about Maverick, but we have no idea what kind of villains or bad guys that he'll be up against in this series. I said that in our previous episodes that none of those stories established any kind of Maverick-specific story elements, so now all of that work falls to Gonzalez to build. Thus, we meet 2 new villains, Hammer and Sickle, and see that they're willing to kill for their boss. We also learn of their boss, Ivan Pushkin, who not only has 2 willing murderers working for him, but has plans to expand his operation. What any of this has to do with Maverick is still up in the air, but we'll get to that. Gonzalez is setting things up for us, and that stuff works pretty well. He's also establishing a tone. Other than their glowing weapons and maybe some super strength on the part of Hammer, everything here feels pretty realistic. We're given details about Francois so that he isn't an unsympathetic character. We've got mob hitmen in dark alleys and illegal power plays. Gonzalez knows that Maverick is a former spy and mercenary, and he's doing a lot of work to maintain that kind of tone and feeling. Unfortunately, penciler Jim Cheung does not fit that tone, which I hate to say because I absolutely love Jim Cheung's artwork. This Maverick book was the first time that I remember seeing his artwork, and I loved it, although he really wouldn't stick with me for a number of years yet. Cheung's artwork is very anime/manga inspired, although not because of big or cartoony eyes, but more with its feel. His characters are very angular, and outside of close-ups, are pretty light on details. Cheung's work is also very colorist-heavy, which traditionally makes it look appropriate for a superhero book. It's all super-powered energy blasts, and bright costumes, and over-the-top fights. But this is an espionage book about mob enforcers and cross-continent manipulation. It should be dark and seedy, but there are little shadows here. What shadows there are misplaced, and even then, the coloring doesn't back up those shadows to indicate their presence. Hammer and Sickle's weapons glow green, and if they're our main light source, then everything should be tinted green. But everyone mostly looks normal in these pages, as if the scene was happening out in the open during the day. I also don't really care for the designs on Hammer and Sickle. This is going to sound weird, but they're too comic booky. Nothing about these two makes them feel like mob enforcers. They just stick out like sore thumbs. And short of their weapons, their clothing indicates nothing about them. A character's costume is their signature. It's the shorthand for their personality. And all I'm getting here is some standard issue, bottom-of-the-barrel looks. To Cheung's credit, the page layouts do flow well. The characters are rendered well, and they act well. The fear on Francois's face is palpable, as is the glee on Sickle's. He is a man who enjoys his job. Kevin Sommer's colors are hit or miss here, as I described earlier. On the one hand, the glowing green effect of the weapons looks cool. On the other hand, though, the green energy colors little but the weapons, and the shadows seem to shift with every panel. This is a co-fault, one part penciler, one part inker, one part the colorist, but it is still something that's really off with the book. Despite all of that critiquing, I still don't feel like this is a bad opening. It's mismatched for sure, but it mostly just gives the book an air of inexperience. Let's give the creative team some time to work together, and we'll see if they improve. Our story continues 3 months later as Maverick returns to Chateau Frontenac in Quebec, Canada. His armor is worn, the cloth elements are torn, and his inner monologue states that this is it. The end of the line. He can't possibly stop it. Elena Ivanova rushes over to him, asking what happened to him. Maverick had gone to one of his secret storage facilities, but when he did so, he found it booby-trapped, and nearly died because of it. Elena asks how he's doing, and he answers that he isn't doing well. The trap tonight took all that he had left. Maverick is tired, and he's honestly just ready to die. He collapses onto his bed and removes his faceplate. For the first time, we get to see the damage that the legacy virus had done. The tissue around Maverick's face is dry, thick veins appearing raised from his flesh. The area is a dull red-brown, as if clotted with blood and dead cells. Elena tries to talk him into continuing his fight. He can't just quit. He can't just let himself die. He tries to retort and starts to cough instead, visibly coughing up something. As he lies back, his phone starts to ring. Elena answers it and finds Chris Bradley on the other end. She makes excuses for Maverick, promising that she'll have him call Chris back later. Then, after she hangs up, she touches Maverick's forehead, which is consumed with fever. Maverick coughs a few more times, and then he slips into unconsciousness. Before we move into Maverick's fever dream, I just want to applaud Gonzalez's ability to work every Maverick-related story point into these 2 pages. I didn't even bring up his descriptions of Maverick or Elena, but he establishes who they are, Maverick's health situation, and he introduces the problem of Chris Bradley super quickly. He doesn't really explain why Maverick was visiting his storage facility. He just goes there and gets blown up. Was he trying to destroy the equipment there? Get it out to use it? Hawk it on the black market? We don't know, unfortunately. Cheung's artwork does work much better here, where the scene is intentionally better lit. The downside is that Maverick comments on how nice the hotel room is, but Cheung lacks background details that would help sell that, and he does a lot of small nicks and scratches on whatever is there, which makes the hotel feel beat up instead of fancy. The scene fades into Maverick's mind, where we find him standing amongst gravestones. There are 3. Maverick, David North, and Christoph Nord. Yep, Maverick isn't the only alias that we've got here. The previously revealed David North is one as well. Elena referred to Maverick as Herr Nord in the Maverick one-shot. Christoph Nord is his birth name, and it's known by very few people. That is why he's surprised when someone calls to him using it. He recognizes that voice, but it can't be her. The camera turns, revealing a dark-haired woman in a wedding dress. She smiles. Finally, they can be together again. Calling the woman Janetta, Maverick hesitates, and she steps forward, hushing him. They embrace, and suddenly Janetta's body transforms, rotting instantly, and she sinks long, pointed fingers into his back. In reality, Elena squeezes his hand. She's here for him. He moves out of the dream for an instant, recognizing her before going into cardiac arrest. Elena jumps into action, providing CPR. Despite her unwillingness to let him go, this isn't working either. She needs to do something else. So she uses her telepathic powers to tap into his mind, hoping to connect with his and pull him out of this. Pull him out of a heart attack? I mean, this isn't a coma. His heart is seizing, Elena. You need a defibrillator, not a mind link. But this is comics, so somehow this works. Elena finds Maverick's mind, calls out to him, and pulls him back. Maverick suddenly starts coughing, his body starts shaking, and he goes into convulsions. Then, as if all of this wasn't freaky enough, Maverick suddenly starts to glow. He screams in agony, and his body suddenly unleashes a huge blast of concussive energy, throwing Elena across the room. Whoa. Maverick regains consciousness. He's alive, but he feels like a mess. Quote, his insides feel like they've been ripped out through his throat and shoved back in with a sledgehammer, unquote. His hands feel like they're on pins and needles or on fire, or he looks down at them and is amazed. Elena asks if he's okay as she picks herself up and crosses the room. She's just as amazed as Maverick to find that his hands are glowing orange. Maverick guesses that the death and rebirth that he just experienced must have somehow triggered his old mutant powers. Even Elena scoffs at this armchair theory, but Maverick presses on. When he was on Team X, he also got an age suppression treatment. Combine that with his mutant genes and then dying and coming back, and, well, why the crap not? Given that you telepathically saved Maverick from a heart attack by thinking hard, Elena, I don't really think that you're in a position to cast aspersions at plot holes. Thank you very much. Maverick explains that he used to be able to absorb kinetic energy without getting hurt. This means that he could, say, fall from 15 stories up and not have a scratch. But never could he rechannel that energy. That is something new. Maverick reaches out for a nearby candlestick, and upon grabbing it, it melts. But once the energy is expended, the tingling vanishes, and the glow goes with it. So whatever has happened to Maverick, it's mutated his powers as well. But on the plus side, he feels good, healthier, better than he has in months. Maverick stands up, theorizing that he may have gone into remission. Elena asks if he thinks it's permanent, or is this just a temporary thing? Until Maverick can see a doctor, though, he's unwilling to guess. Oh, sure. Now Dr. Armchair Maverick McAmateur Guy isn't willing to hypothesize about his powers and health. Anyway, the good news keeps on coming, because the rebirth has also cleared up Maverick's jumbled memories. Years ago, Maverick had his memories messed with by a man named Aldo Farrow. Farrow implanted false memories, which has left Maverick's mind a mess. But now it's like a fog has lifted, or like he's waking up from a dream. His past is finally coming into focus. They don't have time to reminisce about it, though. With all the noise that Maverick's outburst made, someone is bound to investigate. Maverick agrees that leaving is a good idea, and he picks up his mask. Which, of course, is when Hammer and Sickle burst through the wall. Hammer is happy to find them both at the same time, and the pair recognize Hammer and Sickle. Both of them were surprised by the attack, and that each of each other knows the thugs. Maverick orders Elena to connect them telepathically so that they can talk privately. Turns out that, as part of the KGB, Elena had some run-ins with their boss, Pushkin. The same is basically true of Maverick. He stopped some of Pushkin's syndicate activities as a favor for Barrington. Oh, Barrington, you say? Despite this link between them all, Maverick never ran into Hammer and Sickle. He figured that he would just be better off avoiding them altogether. Not that they have a choice now. Pushkin wants to see them both, and Hammer and Sickle will serve as their escorts. Mentally, Maverick suggests that they split up and rendezvous outside. He lays out the whole plan for Elena in mental seconds. Maverick then declines Hammer and Sickle's offer and chucks some beer bottles at the pair. Hammer smashes one in midair, ordering Sickle to follow Elena as she flees the room. Hammer will take Maverick. Despite his stiff, sick muscles, Maverick dodges the first swing of the hammer, but the second one catches him. The blow knocks Maverick back, but it doesn't hurt him. In fact, his hands are glowing again. Well, cool. Now he knows how to power up. Maverick dodges a few more swings, theorizing that he can focus that power into a controlled concussive burst, like when he trashed the room earlier. So he waits for an opening and punches Hammer right in the gut. The blow delivers 10 times the impact of a normal one, dropping Hammer to the floor. But he doesn't go down. Maverick scoops up his grapple line, which is what he used to enter the room through the balcony, and fires it back out. The green hammer streaks by Maverick, barely grazing him, and he jumps onto the line. Hammer follows, using the long handle of his weapon to slide after his target. Maverick gleefully plans to cut the line once he's safe, but the appearance of a helicopter stops him. Hammer and Sickle have an extraction team, and that team opens fire on Maverick. The bullets tear the rooftop apart and wing Maverick. He reels from the pain and falls from the roof, catching a ledge at the last second. Hammer catches up and reaches for Maverick, who decides to gamble on his new powers. He lets go of the ledge, dropping over 4 stories to the street below. And then he gets back up. He is exhausted for it, though. He can't do any more stunts like that. Hammer orders the helicopter, by shouting at it, by the way, not using a microphone or something, to take him down to the street. They fire some warning shots at Maverick, trying to pin him down so that the approaching Sickle can cut him. Elena may have escaped him, but Maverick won't. Of course, that's when Elena pulls up in a car and helps Maverick to escape him. The bad guys are in a helicopter, and they not only pursue our heroes, but continue to fire at them. Maverick curses that they had to leave all of their weapons behind, but wait, hold on. He holds up his hands. The impact of that fall recharged his body. If he could just fire that energy out now in a focused blast, well, that's just crazy enough to work. Maverick leans out of the window, aims his fist, and fires off a blast of energy that downs the helicopter. Unfortunately, we can see Hammer and Sickle jump from the chopper before it explodes. Crap. That blast took everything else that Maverick had, and he drops asleep instantly. Elena, worried about him, but proud of his work, drives them to safety. We just had a whole lot happen. There's only really one-ish scene left in this issue, but it's a huge tonal shift, so let's break down what we just saw. The death rebirth thing is kinda wonky. I'll fully give that this is a superhero comic, and that I've seen characters die and come back in a number of weird ways. But those weird ways typically have some kind of pseudo-sensible explanation. Maverick was dying of a heart attack, his body was failing, and Elena kept him alive by calling him back? Keeping his soul from moving on? I wouldn't even mind this if there was another character fixing the actual physical problem, but there wasn't, so that part bugs me. I'm fine with the idea that the Team X treatments may have affected Maverick's powers. Those procedures have always been super vague and they've never really been gone into, so anything goes there. But Maverick says that the treatments slowed his aging, but we know that Logan and Creed, his teammates, had healing factors. That is what slowed their aging, not some treatments. It is totally possible that Maverick got a different formula or treatment, but there's nothing to indicate that Maverick was treated differently. So this kind of thing isn't quite an error, it's just not right either. I'm also not sure why Maverick needed a third party to mess up his memories. That's like a Weapon X first level initiation thing. Everyone gets their memories messed with. Anyway, we finally learned that Maverick's powers were to absorb kinetic impacts. This basically would make him appear super tough. Punches wouldn't hurt him, falls wouldn't hurt him. I wonder if Maverick could absorb the impact of a bullet when it hit him, thus preventing it from piercing his body. A moot point anyway, given that his powers have changed into rechanneling that energy. I like that Gonzalez has Maverick theorize and play with his powers, testing their limits during the fight. Each of his uses has a reason for it, and there's a logic behind it, and it plays off of Maverick's tactical abilities. It does read a bit distantly, as if Maverick isn't really experiencing what he's going through, but instead, like he's watching it from afar. The action sequences here all work well. It flows well, it's action-packed, and it makes sense. There's something that I don't quite like about Hammer and Sickle's first meeting with Maverick and Elena, though. The pair of villains seem to think that Maverick and Elena wouldn't put up a fight, which seems kind of stupid. Elena's former KGB, and Maverick has a history as long as a Walgreens receipt. They're both fighters. And how did they not know that they'd both be there? Who were they tracking originally, Maverick or Elena? And why not have the chopper watch the balcony to cover their potential escape? I mean, I would buy the argument they were expecting Maverick to be dying, but then why bust into the room? Hammer could have just shoved the door in without making a huge scene. And then Maverick and Elena's telepathic conversation slows the whole moment down. We've got this exciting entrance, boom! And then we stand around, chatting, while our heroes just stand there, thinking. That's exciting, y'all. And then Maverick didn't even have a plan. They just ran and Elena got the car. Why not have that conversation happen while they were fighting Hammer and Sickle? That would have been way more thrilling, and it would have totally flowed better, keeping us moving with the rest of the fight momentum. We catch up with Maverick and Elena in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu, and I'm really not sure if I'm saying that right. I'm outside of Montreal. They ditch their car and are here to stock up on equipment. Maverick states that they're going to have to confront Pushkin eventually, but they're going to need to be prepared first. They knock on the door of a house in the suburbs, and a woman with a baby on her back opens the door. This is Isabel Ferguson and her daughter, Madeline. Isabel is a freelance operative inventor, creating all kinds of tech for whoever can pay, so long as they're above board. Maverick saved her father's life once a while back, so he gets a special discount on her services. He needs all of his usual stuff, and a new chatterbox. What, you may ask, is a chatterbox? It's a custom piece of tech that guarantees a secure line around the world. Perfect for a spy on the go. Isabel gives Maverick her last one. It'll take a day to assemble the rest of his order. Maverick and Elena then camp out in a nearby abandoned church for the night. She notices that the scars on his hands are gone, healed. Maverick takes off his mask next, revealing an unscarred face. Not only are his powers back, not only is his virus in remission, but now he's healed. This unsettles Maverick. He doesn't deserve a second chance like this. The things that he's done, the things that he's seen, he's no saint or a hero. He was honestly ready to die. What is he supposed to do now? Elena doesn't know. It's Maverick's life. He gets to choose the answer to that. There is a brief pause as that thought hangs between them. Then the chatterbox chirps. Chris. Maverick picks up the call and exits the church. Chris, now living in Altamont Springs, Florida, asks where Maverick has been. Or is he intending to blow Chris off like the X-Men did? Maverick kicks himself for forgetting about the kid. They chat for a minute, Maverick asking how the new life is treating him. And for the most part, it's a good life. But Chris's powers have been acting up recently. It hasn't been terrible, but it's been happening. And it's been happening at school. Chris barely got it under control before someone noticed. If the other kids found out that he was a mutant, I mean, that's one thing. But if they found out that he has the legacy virus too, that would just be too much. Maverick tells him basically to stay positive and not worry about future problems. Then he says that he has to go, unwilling to tell Chris that Maverick's own infection is in remission. Dang, man. The next day, Maverick and Elena go to Isabel's, but find the house is trashed. Elena scans the place, but finds no mines. She goes to check the rooms, while Maverick goes to the basement. Isabel's work is raided and trashed. There is no sign of her. A scream draws Maverick back upstairs, where he finds the man himself, Ivan the Terrible Pushkin, along with Hammer and Sickle and a few armed goons. Sickle has Elena by the hair, his blade under her throat. Pushkin explains that, knowing about Elena's presence, they came prepared. They stole psi scramblers from Isabel's stash of equipment. It's good tech. Not that it can help Isabel or Maddie now. With Elena at Sickle's mercy, Maverick is put into restraints. They are Pushkin's prisoners now. Having met our main villain, Ivan Pushkin, let's take a look at my mixed feelings about him. Pushkin's design is kind of unremarkable. He is a middle-aged man, maybe in his 40s or 50s. Cheung does make him look appropriately aged, and that's nice. His dark hair is slicked back from his receding hairline. He has a beard on his round face, an all-black suit and jacket, and a white scarf draped around his shoulders. He certainly looks like some form of crime boss, and honestly, that's great. Pushkin fits into the realistic espionage feel that Gonzalez has been trying to establish. But, while he fits the tone of the book, Hammer and Sickle do not, which then makes Pushkin not fit. Compared to his lackeys, Pushkin is boring. He's too simple and is just generally unimpressive. Sure, Hammer and Sickle look like Chinese knockoffs of G.I. Joe villains, but at least they're memorable. Pushkin could be any nondescript crime lord if you line them all up. If he's going to look this believable, then Hammer and Sickle need to change their designs to match. Or if Hammer and Sickle are going to be silly looking, then so should Pushkin. I want a scar over one eye, a monocle or an eye patch on the other, and a metallic robot hand, dang it. His appearance here in the first issue feels strange to me as well. Typically, in a heroic narrative, you build to the main boss. You know, you fight Bowser at the end of a world in Super Mario Bros., not at the end of the first stage. But Gonzalez is using this appearance to establish elements of Pushkin's personality that we wouldn't get to see otherwise. Neither Hammer or Sickle are cunning enough to trap Maverick. They're just tools, and Pushkin is the brain that manipulates them. He was the one who was able to identify the Psi Scrambler, figure out how to use them, and was the one who laid a trap for Maverick. Pushkin knows when to take advantage of a lucky break, and how and when to apply pressure. We're also learning that he isn't afraid of getting himself involved, all of which are important. We've also now had 2 mentions of Major Barrington, but each one was in a very different context. At the start of the issue, Francois blamed Barrington for ratting out Dubois, implying that he's part of whatever coalition they're in. But that alliance would include Pushkin, who doesn't want those involved exposed. This leads me to think that Barrington was a part of that alliance and then he betrayed Pushkin. But the second mention of him is when Hammer and Sickle encounter Maverick and Elena. Maverick states that he did work for the Major, disrupting some of Pushkin's business. Did Barrington turn over the intervening years? Or did he infiltrate Pushkin's organization? Or did something else happen altogether? Obviously, this story is still ongoing, so the mystery puzzles me, but I'm willing to see how it progresses. My last critique of issue 1 is the lettering. Now, lettering to a comic book is like the musical score to a movie. It generally gets overlooked, falling into the background when it's good. But when it's bad, it can disrupt everything. And we have some bad. Comics are read left to right, panel by panel. Typically, you would start at the uppermost left panel and uppermost left word bubble. Then you would move to the right. If there is another bubble below, you would then move down, starting again at the left, and continue the process again and again and again. But letterer Chris Eliopoulos and virtual calligraphy get kind of creative in some spots, and it makes reading the book a bit aggravating. For example, page 24, panel 1, where Maverick throws the beer bottle so that Elena can run. There are two bubbles very close together on the left-hand side of the panel, making me instinctively read them together. But the second bubble is Maverick's response to Elena's word bubble, which is on the right-hand side of the panel. They should have moved Maverick's second bubble to the right, past Elena's, to keep the flow of the reader's vision moving in the proper direction. Whew. Okay, so that was a rough, uneven opening. There are some good ideas and some good world building, and there is a strong focus on Maverick, all of which keeps me interested. Let's dig into issue 2 and hope that things come together a bit better now that the group has had some practice. Maverick issue 2 mostly takes place in Maverick's mind. Having been captured by Pushkin, the Crimelord begins a brainwashing campaign. Dr. Etta Langstrom, a hunched-over old woman, has built a series of devices that not only allow her to brainwash and program Maverick, but use Elena's psi powers to watch the process in real time and adjust accordingly. Langstrom and Pushkin are forcing Maverick to relive his worst memories. This will break him, and once they put him back together, he'll be much more open to working for Pushkin. Langstrom also confirms that the legacy virus is in remission, which was caused by the reactivation of Maverick's powers. Most of this scene is the Doctor and Pushkin chatting, establishing more of who they are as people and how they work. Langstrom may be a doctor, but she is certainly not a moral one. Pushkin may be a patient man, waiting for the results that he hired Langstrom for, but that patience isn't everlasting. A lot of the scene is exposition, and it really feels too specific at times. There's one series of panels that have Langstrom administering haloperidol, but she doesn't say why or how it will help the process. She just explains what it does to the human body. She's a woman who clearly enjoys her work, but that doesn't help me understand her work. Maverick's flashback makes up the majority of the issue, but there's one other scene in the book, so I'll just get that out of the way now. We return to St. Jean-sur-Richelieu and the house of Isabel Ferguson. She and her daughter, Maddie, are fine, having hidden in a specialized room within the house. Isabel has been waiting to leave, but Pushkin left a man to finish the job. Given the hours that have passed, she figures that this guy isn't going to leave and creeps out to shoot him with a tranquilizer. Isabel just finishes putting his arms into restraints when her ex-husband, Michel, arrives to pick up Maddie for his weekend. He is understandably not happy with what he finds. Michel is scared for his daughter. He always knew the danger could find her. If Isabel is going to continue to risk her life by working with Maverick, then he'll have to sue for custody of Maddie. Unwilling to lose her child, Isabel agrees that she'll stop, but only after she's made sure that Maverick is safe. Ignoring all of the family drama, which I like, the point of this scene is to give Maverick an outside ally. Up to this point in his narrative, everyone that Maverick knows is connected to someone else. Sabretooth, Wolverine, the X-Men, all of those characters have no personal stake in Maverick's life. They're allies, or in Sabretooth's case, an enemy. But Isabel is his friend, and she's demonstrated her intelligence, her cunning, and her skills with this scene. She might be a work-out-of-her-house mom, but she isn't just a suburban housewife either. The only other ally that Maverick has, Elena, has also been caught, and he sure as crap isn't going to be saving himself. Someone is going to need to stop him and save him, and Gonzalez is positioning Isabel to do that. My only real problem is that Michel says that he has the clout and money to win custody of Maddie. Now, admittedly, we don't know Michel's job. No one's told us anything else about him. But we do know that Isabel sells tech to extra-legal figures and governments, which would make me think that she's the one with money and clout. There's no way that she's a freelance weaponeer who charges clearance prices for her custom goods. There's just no way. She's got to have money. Oh, and I do have a problem with Isabel hiding from Pushkin's men. She does say that she had a feeling that something was up, and so she hid herself and Maddie when Pushkin's men arrived. But what caused that feeling? Did her cameras see Pushkin's men approach the house? Did proximity alarms pick up their approach? Why would Gonzalez give us this half-assed reasoning when there were totally possible, viable explanations on the table? We know that she's good with tech and that she's experienced with freelance operative. She has a freaking hiding room with security cameras and tranquilizer guns prepared. Just have her use her tech resources. This isn't a complicated plot issue. I don't know why I'm this upset about it. The bulk of the issue is occupied by Maverick's past, and I really enjoy it. Outside of Maverick's time as an agent of Team X, we really know next to nothing about him. Author Gonzalez knows that, so not only does this flashback explain Maverick's past, connecting all of the available dots, it also introduces new plot elements that he can then explore moving forward into the rest of the book. The flashback starts in Venice, where a member of West Germany's underground freedom fighters fails to stop an assassin from accomplishing his mission. The assassin is called the Confessor, and the freedom fighter is Christoph Nord, who will eventually become Maverick. The Confessor's target was a KGB cryptographer who had planned to defect. Nord was supposed to protect him. The pair fight, but the Confessor's armor shrugs off Nord's knife, allowing him to break Nord's forearm. He then tosses a rosary at Nord, which explodes, hurling him to the ground below. Nord spent 6 months in Italy recovering from that fight. That's when he met Ginetta Lucia Barsalini and fell in love. A year later, the pair wed, and we see Major Barrington at the reception, toasting the couple. 3 years later, Nord returns home outraged and distraught. His underground unit, Cell 6, is dead. Every one of them is dead. Except for Nord. He was the leak. Or rather, his double-agent wife was using him for intelligence for the Russians. At first, Ginetta denies these accusations. Then, out of nowhere and for seemingly no reason, she drops the act. Yes, she says, he fell for every move that she made. It's honestly been her best performance to date. Angry, Nord tells her to tell him who her superiors are. If she doesn't, then he'll kill her. Ginetta doesn't think that he'll do that. She's a defenseless woman that he's pledged to love forever. He won't kill her. But Nord leads in, pressing his gun into her face. Ginetta grabs a kitchen knife and stabs at him, and he automatically fires in self-defense. Even Nord is surprised by his action. Horrified by it, even. Ginetta falls to the ground, cursing her husband for a fool. He didn't just kill her, but their unborn child as well. A toy rattle, boxed as a surprise for her husband, lies on the floor, exposed during the struggle. Nord drops his gun and falls to his knees. After that, Nord became bitter, guilt-ridden, and disillusioned. He threw himself into his work as a freedom fighter. He would take the hardest mission and do whatever he was asked. Eventually, this got the attention of the CIA, and they scouted him. Wanting out, wanting his old life dead, he accepted. Christoph Nord became David North, and he was assigned to Team X. He relives the mission where he had to kill his brother Andreas in order to save Logan and Creed. Afterwards, in the bar with Logan, is where he picked up his code name. Logan offers his condolences for the death of Andreas, but North pushes it aside. Ginetta taught him not to trust anyone, even those you love. Logan points out that living like that will keep him alone. North says that he can live with that. Logan picks up his beer. A regular Maverick, eh? It wasn't long after that the carbonadium synthesizer mission happened. Shortly after that, Team X was shut down, and Maverick went freelance. We catch up with his most recent memories last. He went to Quebec, to one of his storehouses, but it was a trap. He was caught in the explosion and landed in the river, and then he wakes up. In a nice bed, in a nice house. Not the Chateau Frontenac. And where's Elena? Maverick's confused, but luckily someone is there to explain it all to him. Ivan Pushkin. Behind him is Hammer and Sickle. Maverick can almost remember fighting Hammer and Sickle recently, can't he? But no, they've never fought. That's impossible. Pushkin explains that it was Hammer and Sickle who pulled Maverick out of the river. They've been looking for him for months, actually, because Pushkin has information for him. And he also needs a favor. Pushkin explains that it was Major Arthur Frederick Barrington who enlisted Janetta as a spy to manipulate Maverick. Once she died, he pulled Maverick into Team X, as he was the liaison between Team X and the CIA. Then, once Maverick was no longer necessary, Barrington infected him with the legacy virus to kill him. When that proved too slow a method, which, come on, man, Barrington decided to booby-trap Maverick's weapons cache. And really, who else could have done that? Maverick knows, intellectually, that he shouldn't trust Pushkin, that his every nerve should be warning him off of this. But they aren't. And he can't help but believe him. So he turns to Pushkin. All of this information is great, but why tell him? What does Pushkin get out of this? And he is so glad that you asked. You see, Barrington is set to testify at an inquest in Ontario within the week. If he's allowed to speak, then it will cause Pushkin's operation some considerable harm. If he's able. Maverick, having suited up during their conversation, puts on his mask. Just tell him when and where. I'm left with a lot of negative feelings in regards to how this issue ends, but not because it's poorly written. I'm upset because our lead character is being manipulated into killing an old friend, and so kudos to the creative team for instilling that dread in me. Maverick does mentally struggle with what Pushkin's saying here at the end, but the brainwashing from earlier was just enough to quiet those concerns. The creative team took the time to make this turn believable, even if we know that Pushkin's lying. I do find it hard to believe that once he's away from Pushkin, Maverick's own mind won't question this. He's known Barrington for decades. You'd think that he would be much more inclined to find the Major and question him before trying to kill him. I can only assume that the conditioning won't allow Maverick to follow those mental trails. The only thing that doesn't really work for me in this is the reveal about Janetta and her death. And not even because it's bad, but just because it's so fast. We meet Janetta, they fall in love, they get married, she betrays him, and he kills her, all bam 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 bam. It does do a good job of explaining why Maverick worked alone for years, or why he was willing to kill Creed back in Wolverine issue 87 when he was wounded. Maverick was a cold-hearted professional, his hard life leaving him with no sympathy for anyone else. But if that's the case, then why did he save Logan and Creed in West Germany? I think that Maverick knew that people couldn't be trusted, and so he wanted to prove them wrong. He would be the one person that could be counted on, always accomplishing his mission. Why else would he risk his life for his teammates? Or befriend Elena? Or Chris? Maverick wants to be what everyone can't. Otherwise, the Janetta stuff is all just too fast. And why would she admit her role in this deception at all? I'd have played the, "How could I betray you? I'm carrying your child" card there and then try to salvage the situation. Overall, this was a good issue. We got a lot of answers about Maverick's past, our cast continued to grow and was interesting, and yeah, I'm kind of being won over here. There are still a few minor lettering glitches in this issue, but the artwork works a lot better on the whole. I had actually missed the baby rattle falling off of the table onto the floor in my initial read-through, but yeah, the team set up and delivered on that small element really well. I ain't saying that this is the best comic that I've ever read, but it's definitely an improvement from issue 1. Next time, Maverick's mission of murder takes him back to Canada. But you don't get to kill an important witness in Canada without facing their premier group of superheroes, Alpha Flight. Then, in issue 4, A despondent Chris Bradley runs away from home, and only Maverick can possibly find him, if he can be freed from Pushkin's control. See you folks then.
Everyone, there are a million podcasts vying for your time and attention, and I'd like to thank you for listening to mine. If you would like to get in touch with me, to share a concern, request a series, compliment me, berate me, whatever you like, send me an email at cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Otherwise, thanks for listening.